The gut is responsible for creating a lot of our B vitamins. B vitamins are very important for neurotransmitter production. So when I talk about neurotransmitters, I'm talking about things like serotonin, melatonin, GABA, which is our anti-anxiety neurotransmitter, dopamine, which is our reward center. The gut plays a really large role in creating some of these neurotransmitters. It's a lot more complicated than that. So just because you're making serotonin in the gut doesn't mean that the serotonin is reaching the serotonin receptors in the brain. But we do know that the gut does have a really large role to play in creating those B vitamins that are very important for creating neurotransmitters. And the gut is also very important for digesting and absorbing all of our nutrients. If we're not digesting our food, we aren't absorbing the nutrients from that food to be able to function effectively. And to do that, you need a robust and good gut health.
Hi, I'm the self-development coach, Johnny Lawrence, and welcome to the Self-Development Podcast. Today, I'll be chatting with Dana Chapman. Dana is a qualified nutritional therapist and neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. Say that 3 times fast. Her approach to depression, anxiety, burnout, brain fog, and lack of gusto make her truly unique. Dana believes that it's only when you truly understand how the brain and the body work that you can take control of your mental health. Her aim is to empower people by providing an understanding of how your brain and your body actually work and get the answers to why you're feeling low, anxious, and withdrawn, and why you have no energy. It's at this point that she can help with overcoming these feelings using food, movement, sleep, stress management, supplementation, and much, much more. Dana's education and experience have proven that there's so much you can do to feel your very best and achieve a clearer mind, long-lasting energy, and freedom from the cloud of depression and the choke of anxiety that is common in today's society. Now, I can't take credit for that beautifully worded last bit because I took that from your website, that freedom from the cloud of depression and the choke of anxiety. You are a poet, it seems. How are you today? How are you today, Dana?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you, Johnny?
I'm okay. Yeah, we're recording over a bank holiday. This is how committed we are. So I hope everybody really appreciates this.
Yeah.
You know, what's it like where you are? How's the weather?
Much better than it has been. I was camping over the last weekend, and it was absolutely freezing. But today it's supposed to be about 21 degrees. So I'll take that any day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I live in Cornwall, and when we bought the brochure to move to Cornwall, we were told it's always sunny. This is not true. there are 2 ways of being. You can either see a rain cloud or you have a rain cloud. It sort of rains a lot, you know. But when you get a sunny day, it's paradise. It really is. But
yes.
I'm so grateful to have you on today. I mean, we had a brief conversation some weeks back, and I was blown away by some of the ways that you think about things and some of the research that you passed along to me. It's going to be I'm really excited about a conversation.
Yeah, me too. I relish the opportunity to talk about this kind of stuff always. So thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, no worries. I mean, if you're anything like me, you love geeking out over this stuff. I love it. You know, we can geek out about it for ages. But I mean, for those that might not have come across you, can you tell people a bit about yourself and sort of your journey so far?
So my name is Dana Chapman. As you said, I run a company called DC Nutrition, which I founded about a year ago. So still fairly new into business, but I've been in the health and wellness space for my son's about to be 5, and I started when he was 1. So for 4 years now, been in the health and wellness space. But I wasn't always a nutritional therapist. I was a consultant for one of the big 4 consulting firms. But my interest in health and nutrition really started when I was a chubby teenager, and I didn't want to lose weight in the traditional yo-yo dieting way. So I just started reading health magazines and articles about how to get healthy, because I thought if I just get healthy, then surely I'll feel better and maybe I'll lose a little bit of weight. But it wasn't, I mean, the weight loss was a side effect that I did experience, but what intrigued me more was that I could eat foods that were high in B vitamins, and that would give me energy. And that was really important for me at the time because I was playing hockey 6 days a week. And then I would get ill and I'd be like, okay, so what foods can I eat to try and make myself feel better or heal myself a bit quicker. And then I read that vitamin C and zinc rich foods can help all of that. So I suppose that's where my interest in nutrition started. But it was only when I moved back to the UK in about 2013 and I met a nutritional therapist and she told me what she did. And I was like, that's my absolute dream job. I found out that I could study it part-time because I was working. So I needed to do it part-time. I couldn't put myself through another 4-year college or university degree. So I literally got a hold of the college and started studying in 2014. I had to do A-level biology and chemistry before I could enter into the degree because it's a science degree, and I had done accounting and finance and all of that in my first degree. So it took me a while to get qualified. So I started studying in 2014 and finally finished last year, June, with my final qualification, which is the NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming course. So I suppose that's the journey that got me to being a nutritional therapist. But the way that I got interested in mental health was when I was working in the health and wellness space, mental health was starting to be spoken about a lot more. And it was wonderful because people's interest and it was being brought to the forefront of people's minds that we should be thinking about mental health a lot more. But I believe there was still a really key missing piece to it, which was what we eat and our physiology and how that relates to our mental health and how people can take control. Yes, they may have a diagnosis and they may be put on medication, but what if they don't want to go on that medication? Or what if that medication isn't working? I mean, the rates of depression and anxiety, the rates of people actually being in remission by taking medication is about 50%, which is really, really low.
Yeah.
So it really was an area that I thought that we could empower people. I got excited about it because organizations were talking about it a lot more. And this is really a way to empower people, to empower organizations on how you can really take control of your own mental health and heal yourself from it. So that sort of in a nutshell is why I've got to where I am today.
I mean, a big part of what you do, I mean, first of all, I love the term nutritional therapist. I wasn't sure if I'd heard that before, because I've heard of nutritionists and I've heard of therapists, but I love that combination and I love what it potentially represents, that things can improve. Let's not say fix or better, but things can improve through your diet, through sleep, through the basics. As a person who used to be a fitness instructor, it was always really striking to me that when anyone came to me with any health concerns or weight loss desires, they really wasn't covering the basics most of the time. They wasn't sleeping very well. They obviously wasn't eating very well, and they wasn't moving. They wasn't doing the basic things, and it's not their fault. It's not like an accusation or judgment or anything. It's just making people realize that, you don't have to go to the shakes. You don't have to take the sleeping meds. You can actually do this, but it might not be instant. But in the long term, it would be more of a long-term, sustainable, permanent fix. So what you're doing is fabulous. And it's really nice to see. And the NLP, I've always had a fascination with NLP. It's definitely on my wish list to do an NLP course at some point. So the two together, I'm very envious. You must be very knowledgeable and all that stuff. So, I mean, you talk a lot about gut health. And you have a real passion around it. I mean, the call that we had last time was predominantly about gut health, and I do too. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize its importance. But what does gut health mean? And could you sort of talk a bit more about the science of it and simplify it for people like me?
You mean the science of it specifically around mental health?
Yeah, just sort of what is gut health? Because we hear gut health all the time. And people, I don't know, are sure what that means exactly. I think they're not sure at all. I've heard some very wild explanations for what gut health is. But an explanation of what gut health is and what it does and all that sort of thing would be really helpful.
Cool. So I'll try to keep it short and succinct because I think I've had hours and hours of lectures on gut health. But what's important to understand is gut health doesn't only mean the guts down there, what you can feel below your belly button. Gut health, or the gut, the gastrointestinal tract, starts from the mouth and ends at the anus, right? So gut health means everything from here all the way down to the other end where we excrete our waste. And so I suppose gut health is ensuring that all of the processes along the way work sufficiently. And already in society, we're missing out on this part of gut health. And actually, there's a step before this part of gut health, which is actually looking at and smelling your food. So just by looking at and smelling your food starts the digestion process. It starts to tell the brain food is about to arrive. Start producing stomach acid, because your stomach doesn't produce acid all of the time. Otherwise, it would eat your stomach away. So it only produces stomach acid when you eat food. So smelling food, being aware that you're about to eat food is the first step of gut health. Lots of people are eating at their desks. Lots of people are eating, watching a device. Lots of people are eating whilst doing something else. And that takes away that first phase of digestion because you're not focused on actually eating your food. The second area where people really struggle with or could really help themselves is the second phase of digestion is actually chewing your food. Now, we're supposed to chew our food between 20 and 40 times each mouthful. And when I say that to people, I get that exact reaction is, oh my goodness. And the reason is because we need to break down our food sufficiently to allow for absorption further on down the digestive tract. So the most absorption happens in the small intestine, but some absorption of nutrients does happen in the large intestine as well. But for your small intestine to be able to digest that food sufficiently, we need to be chewing sufficiently to break it down and mix it with our saliva, which is there are digestive enzymes in the saliva. And then food kind of goes down stomach, small intestine, large intestine. Stress plays a really large role in gut health. So gut health, I suppose, to answer your question quickly, and then I can get into some specifics a little bit more. Gut health is all of the processes are happening sufficiently and effectively, which means not only do you not have gut symptoms like gas and bloating, but there are other symptoms of poor gut health like skin breakouts, poor skin health, brain fog, poor mental health are also signs that you've got poor gut health. Energy production, nutrient deficiencies or nutrient sufficiencies. Those are all of the things that kind of add up to gut health. So it's not just the absence of gas and bloating. It's, do you feel energetic and well every day to continue on your path of whatever your day has got for you? And do you have clear skin? Are you able to think properly? Are you free of anxiety and depression? All of those things actually have a gut health. Gut health has a really large role to play in all of those. Yeah. Then a lot of talk these days in gut health is around the gut microbiome. And that's because the gut microbiome has such a large role to play in our health. So the gut microbiome is made up of 37 trillion bacterial cells. So the bacterial cells in our gut actually outnumber our own human cells. So we are more bacteria than we are human. Wow. And it weighs about 2 kgs. So the gut microbiome is huge. But what we want is a real diverse and robust microbiome to be able to give all of the health benefits that we need. I think that might be all I have to say on gut health for the moment.
I mean, some of those symptoms there, I mean, that might well be every person I know. Like, you know, so it just shows that, you know, I've known people, you know, go to the doctor for things like that. You know, I don't have any energy, or just feel a bit low all the time, or I've got brain fog. And I think in society these days, we tend to write that off as normal. if you have that complaint to somebody else, they might say, oh yeah, I'm the same, I walk into a room and forget. And it's like, actually, these are all of these are just very small alarm bells going off, aren't they? They're warning signals saying, hey, pay attention, something's happening, And I think that in itself, around mental health, gut health, and all sorts of health, is it is a detachment from what we are, who we are, the fact that we can't even, we find it unreasonable that we might have to chew our food that many times. It's just it's in itself is something to look at, isn't it? But I mean, that's gut health. But what is the relationship between a person's gut health and their mental health?
So this is really huge. We have what's called the gut-brain axis. And the gut-brain axis, one of the main parts of the gut-brain axis is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve attaches behind the eye, and it sort of wanders down through the throat, down past a lot of organs. It's also called the wandering nerve because it wanders through so many places in the body, and it attaches to the gut as well. Now, the vagus nerve senses danger. So when there's a threat, that vagus nerve activates and activates the stress response. Now, the vagus nerve also then attaches to the gut, like I said. So that's one way that there's a gut-brain axis, and that's almost brain to gut. But 90% of the signals actually go from gut to brain, not brain to gut. I suppose the easiest way to explain it is, in utero, when we were being developed from an embryo, our gut and our brain actually split from the same cell. Ooh. So it was the same cell originally, and the gut goes down and the brain goes up. And the connection between the two is that vagus nerve. So we have that connection between the gut and the brain. And like I said, 90% of the signals actually go from gut to brain, and only 10% go from brain to gut.
Wow.
So the gut, and there's been lots of research on the gut microbiome and how the gut microbiome can educate things like the immune system, but the gut microbiome can also educate the stress response. And the gut microbiome can then send that signal that all is well to the brain and that it doesn't need to activate or fire. So the gut does play a really large role when it comes to mental health, but also the gut is responsible for creating a lot of our B vitamins. B vitamins are very important for neurotransmitter production. So when I talk about neurotransmitters, I'm talking about things like serotonin, melatonin, GABA, which is our anti-anxiety neurotransmitter, dopamine, which is our reward center. The gut plays a really large role in creating some of these neurotransmitters. So does the brain. And it's not necessarily, the research hasn't shown that the gut microbes producing those neurotransmitters actually mean that you're going to have good mental health. It's a lot more complicated than that. So just because you're making serotonin in the gut doesn't mean that the serotonin is reaching the serotonin receptors in the brain.
How interesting.
But we do know that the gut does have a really large role to play in creating those neurotransmitters, in creating those B vitamins that are very important for creating neurotransmitters. And the gut is also very important for digesting and absorbing all of our nutrients. If we're not digesting our food, we aren't absorbing the nutrients from that food. And we need to not forget that nutrients is how the body actually works. I mean, we all take it for granted that we live, eat, and breathe, and our bodies just function, but they don't just function by magic. They need nutrients to be able to function effectively. And to do that, you need a robust and good gut health for that as well.
I mean, that really, really does explain the saying, a gut instinct, doesn't it? It really does. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like, ultimately, it's possible to have autonomy over your gut health and your mental health to a degree, barring any very serious conditions. I'm talking about somebody that's just maybe finding most days challenging a little bit, struggling a little bit with their mental health or emotional health, however you want to put it. But what are the type of like lifestyle choices that contribute to bad health? Because I mean, if we have autonomy, then actually the choices that we're making every single day, like we spoke about originally, sleep, activity, food, hydration, all of these different things are going to have an impact. But I mean, what are the sort of common lifestyle choices that people make? Because there's in some cases, people might do something that they believe is good for them, but actually isn't. You know, I've seen this quite a lot, you know. So yeah, what are sort of the contributing factors to sort of lifestyle choices?
One of the biggest things I find that contributes to people's lifestyles and the choices they make is stress. Stress, I mean, this is what I did my dissertation on, actually, is the link between stress, gut health, and mental health. But stress causes you to seek out foods that are high in fat and sugar, because the stress hormone cortisol is made from cholesterol. So your body's saying, give me more cholesterol because I need to make more of these stress hormone cortisol so that this person can get away from the danger. And we just have so many stressors. I know you posted something on Instagram a while ago about the stress bucket, and you just keep on filling it, but you're not opening the tap to release the stress. And that's how people's lives are these days, aren't they? It's one stress after another, after another, after another. But what we're not doing is we're not building in those lifestyle elements to help reduce the stress load. So, I mean, stress has a direct impact on gut health. Stress has a direct impact on the gut microbiome, which I've already said is very important. And we can't be in stress mode and rest. So I like to think of the nervous systems in opposition. So we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight and flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest, digest, and repair. And you can't be in both at the same time. You can only be in fight or flight, or you can be in rest, digest, and repair. And we're in fight or flight a lot, which means that we're not resting, we're not digesting, and we're not repairing. So our bodies are constantly, even though we might not feel the stress, our bodies are actually constantly in a state of stress because of not enough rest, because of the toxins that we eat, because of the toxins that we're exposed to in our environment. I'm kind of digressing a bit here, I realize.
No. I mean, a nice analogy that I like to use for that parasympathetic and sympathetic system is it's like trying to push the brake and the accelerator on your car at the same time. It's just like, you're trying to do two things that are oppose each other in a sense, aren't you? You know? So yeah, I think that was very beautifully explained, actually. So, I mean, what would you say is like it's probably putting you on the spot, but what is a good definition of like stress? Because it's not always a big traumatic life event, is it? It can sometimes be the smaller things.
Yes, and we must also remember that there is stress and there is perceived stress, and the body doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
So if you have had some trauma and that you were exposed to that trauma again, that is still a perceived stress in the body. Your body doesn't actually know that you're not in a safe environment. So it's about stress and perceived stress. And I've just written a blog on the effect of stress on gut health. And there's another one coming out on the effect of stress and nutrients. But what I explain in that is that stress can come from many different angles. So it can be emotional, it can be financial, it can be things that are happening in your environment. But it can also be the things that we are exposed to. So like I said, toxins is a stress on the body. Having imbalanced blood sugar levels is a stress on the body. So if your sugar levels are imbalanced, your blood sugar levels drop, your body thinks that you are in danger. It needs to ramp up those blood sugar levels. And so your body will secrete a little bit of cortisol then, so that you can break down glucose in your cells and put it back into your bloodstream, because your bloodstream is very good at keeping your blood levels level. So if they drop, that's a stress on your body. A lack of nutrients. If you're not getting in all of the nutrients that you need on a daily basis, your body thinks you're going into starvation. That's a stress on the body. So there are a lot of things that people don't realize add to this stress bucket, and a lot of them are environmental, and a lot of them are actually in our control, like the food that we eat. Over exercising is another stress, and I know exercise is amazing for mental health, but some people do go overboard, and that is a stress on the body. So I suppose we all need to be aware of those. Lack of sleep is a stress on the body.
I mean, it sounds to me like what you're saying is, there needs to be a harmony because like you can do too much of anything. You can abuse anything. You know, a lot of people talk about alcohol being bad for you and things like that, which we can see all that, but actually having a glass of wine every day isn't bad for you. Having a bottle of wine every day is, and it's like understanding those subtle differences, and we all get caught up in it, and we all sort of like I don't know, cheer each other along on stuff like that, like you see it all the time. I'm sober, and I chose to become sober some time ago. But, when you do become sober, you do notice everywhere that alcohol is being sold to you everywhere you are, every single. I mean, I remember a little while after I became sober, I went to the supermarket. I got out of my car. I went over to the trolley, and on the trolley handle was an advertisement for a beer. And I was like, wow, I haven't even got in the shop yet.
Wow.
And it's just that's what I mean. So a lot of what's being sold to us is very powerful marketing agencies are behind some of this stuff. We kind of don't stand a chance, really. We're being worked on all the time.
Yeah, and the same goes for food, right? How much food is marketed as healthy,
or natural, or stuff like that.
You don't see farmers going, "Oh, buy this apple, it's natural."
Yeah, and that's it. It's the use of that language. Like natural is associated with nature, which makes you think it's good for you. So you might have, some companies even have it in their name. And it's very misleading. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to get to is like, I asked you what type of lifestyle choices contribute to bad gut health, and it's interesting to me that you sort of talked about the real basics, but even on that front, we kind of don't stand a chance because we're being sold all the time the idea that something is good for you when actually it isn't. Because who's got the time to research this stuff, and that's why we have podcasts like this, so we can have somebody like you who comes in, who has done all the research and has done all of the education and can explain it to us so that we understand. So grateful for that, and really am. So it's believed that we currently experience in a mental health crisis. I mean, there's a lot of people that are struggling with their mental health at the moment, and many people are being prescribed antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication as a consequence. Do you feel that there is another option to that for the people that want it?
Gosh, absolutely. I mean, like I said in the beginning, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication helps about 50% of people. And sure, you can take an anti-anxiety, and I don't want anyone to feel bad if anyone is listening to this podcast and they are on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication, because in some circumstances, absolutely, it is necessary.
Yeah.
But you're taking a pill to mask a symptom. And I always believe that your body shows you symptoms because something isn't working correctly. If you are depressed, it's a sign that there's something isn't happening correctly in the body. And when I work with clients on a one-on-one basis, the three main elements that I talk about with depression and anxiety is gut health, stress, and inflammation, because all of those play a really large role in our mental health. So I absolutely think that there is another way that people can go. Of course, it always is dependent on what caused the anxiety or what caused the depression in the first place. But the research shows that many people who are depressed and or anxious is because of a stressful event in their life at some point in time. Okay, so it's acknowledging what has caused that depression and or anxiety, but it's also then supporting your body to be able to work correctly so that it can produce the neurotransmitters that help us feel good. Serotonin, dopamine, melatonin, GABA. So all of those are important. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, is to empower people that they can take control of their own mental health. They don't need to take a pill, or they may need to take a pill, but the decision may then be theirs. Yeah. But don't you want to sort out the root cause of your depression and or anxiety, rather than let's take a pill and hope in a year or two's time I can stop taking the pill, or am I going to take the pill for the rest of my life? I mean, some people do want to take that option. I was going to say something different, but I think that's a bit harsh. some people do want to take that option, and that's fair enough. But like I said, it will only help 50% of people. So the research is there that nutritional therapy is one of the safest. There are no side effects to a good diet. There are no side effects to stress management techniques. There are no side effects to managing inflammation in the body. In fact, all of these things will probably not only prolong your life, but improve the quality of your life as well.
Yeah, I mean, I loved that you started with you know, the caveat of, you know, some people do need to take antidepressants, or it is the right decision. I mean, in general, I think the general consensus is that an antidepressant is a bit like a crutch when you've broken your leg. It's there to support you while you're vulnerable, you know. But I do, you know, I tend to concur with you in the sense of that, you know, ultimately, until you sort of address that underlying issue, then you are always going to be dependent on tablets. And the risk there is, when you run out, the come down and the situation that happens between the time that you've stopped taking your medication to when you next go back on. I've witnessed that, and it's horrendous. It's really, really hard. Somebody can feel like they are literally going mad. You know, because all of their hormones are all kicked out of sync. They've got this drug that was in their system that's not in there anymore. And it's, you know, you can always get hold of some good food. You can't always get hold of these medications, and that's the problem. And you know, some people do need to take them because they've got deep-rooted, very serious, very necessary issues. So they are not necessarily, they need to take that medication. So we're not talking about those people. We're talking about the everyday person that is struggling. They've got a lot on. Maybe they're a parent with kids, and they've got their own business, or they work for someone that is stressful, and they're not getting enough time outside. They're not getting time to eat their lunch right. They're not sleeping very well because they've got lots of stress. All of these things, you do not have to put up with this. You do not have to it's not normal. Don't let anybody tell you that this is normal. Everybody's going through this. That's not true. You know, you don't have to put up with it. I mean, the three things you mentioned there was gut health, stress, and inflammation. You've explained gut health and stress, but just for people, because inflammation very much is associated with, I don't know, you twist your ankle and it becomes inflamed, but I'm sure that's not what you mean in this case. So what do you mean by inflammation?
Yeah, inflammation is one of the things that is implicated. The research shows that people who are depressed have higher inflammatory markers in their blood. And one of the ways that inflammation affects mental health is it stops that serotonin in the brain from binding to the serotonin receptors. Now, I link all of the three together because inflammation is an immune response, and the gut, again, is responsible for 70% of our immunity. The gut microbiome educates the immune system on when to fire and when not to fire. But often when we're stressed, you can have a situation where you have something called leaky gut. Stress to some extent causes leaky gut, and leaky gut to some extent can then cause inflammation because particles can pass through from the bloodstream, from the digestive system into the bloodstream. And the immune system's like, I don't know what this is. It shouldn't be here. Let's attack it. And that results in inflammation. Our diets these days, eating a lot of processed foods, seed oils are added to everything. Seed oils are very, very inflammatory in the body, and we're exposed to them everywhere, right? I mean, I love hummus. Hummus has always got rapeseed oil or sunflower seed oil, and all of these oils are very processed, and the process of getting them into an oil makes them very toxic in the body, makes them very inflammatory in the body. And I'm talking about hummus. I'm not talking about the crisps that people eat or the takeaway that people might eat, because a lot of restaurants, especially takeaway shops, are going to be using these refined oils to cook their food.
Yeah, it's cheaper, it's more convenient, all these different things. I mean, just let's hover there for a moment. You're talking, like you said, you rightly say, you're talking about hummus. Like that is something that people very often define as healthy.
Yeah.
Look at that. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's okay. I'm having hummus on pita bread and stuff
Yeah.
like that. It's like, this is what
Yeah.
I mean. It's these little things, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. And look at your pita bread. I'm sure there's going to be some preservatives and additives in there
Yeah.
that aren't
Like,
going to benefit your gut.
I know. And this is the minefield of it all, you know, because
Yeah.
the conversation we've had up until this moment has been sort of trying to explain to people what's going on, the processes, the
Mm,
reasoning behind things, the background, if you will. But I
mm,
mean, what I like to sort of poke around and find out is solutions, you know.
hmm.
You know, what can people focus on? So I'm a big believer that we always focus on the solution and not the problem, you
Yeah.
know. So we know what the problem is. We now need to move away from that and create an awareness of what the solution is. So you speak a lot about nutrition,
Hmm.
movement, sleep, stress management. What actions can people take in these areas to improve their mental health, gut health, and all those things?
Yeah, amazing. So I stress management is definitely one of the key elements. So I always recommend to my clients doing something like deep breathing exercises, incorporate that into your day, 1 to 5 minutes. 5 minutes if you are suffering from depression and anxiety, 1 to 2 minutes is going to benefit anyone, right? So really getting into the body, and help breath work also helps you get into the body and out of the mind. So I always say find something that works for you either, and I recommend breathe in for 4, out for 6, or double the inhale to the exhale, so in for 4, out for 8, or box breathing, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4.
Mm.
And you're looking at doing that for 1 to 2 minutes, 2 to 3 times a day. I like to recommend it around food or meal times, because then you're priming your digestive system for digestion. Breath work switches you out of sympathetic, switches you out of fight or flight, and puts you back into rest, digest, and repair.
Right.
So I always recommend breath work. I always recommend things like spending time in nature. Spending time in nature is free and available to everyone. Everyone
Yeah.
can find a green space or a brown space or something outside. And being outside in nature has 2 benefits. One, it actually has been proven that it helps support a beneficial and robust gut microbiome. So you're increasing your gut diversity, you're supporting your gut health just by being in nature. And the second thing is, well, if you're doing it in the daytime, you're exposing yourself to daylight. Daylight helps set your circadian rhythm. It helps tell your body when is morning, when is evening. Exposing yourself to sunlight during the day, 15 to 20 minutes, has been proven to be supportive of mental health conditions. So helps improve people's mental health if they are suffering from a condition. But also it helps produce melatonin, and melatonin is our hormone that helps us fall asleep. So you will fall asleep quicker and you will have a better quality of sleep if you're exposing yourself to sunlight. The ideal time is midday, 15 to 20 minutes at midday. So that would be the second element. So the first element I said is breath work. The second element is spending time in nature. The third element is always going to be around diet. And a diet that supports the gut microbiome is a diet that is diverse in plant foods. Now, the organization that I belong to, which is called BANT, they are the governing body for nutritional therapists. They recommend 7 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, caveat, maximum 2 portions of fruit. So we need to be eating 5 portions of vegetables daily. Another recommendation is to eat all of the colors of the rainbow.
Mm.
Now, diversity of the gut microbiome is correlative to diversity in the diet. So the best way to increase diversity of your gut microbiome is to increase diversity in your diet. So please get rid of that shopping cart that has the same foods in it week in and week out, and go to the shops and choose seasonal produce. Choose something that you necessarily wouldn't have chosen last week. Go vegan for one day, because vegan often means, please don't go buy vegan burgers when I say go vegan. What I actually mean is go get some beans and lentils in your diet, because beans and lentils are full of fiber, and fiber is really important for feeding the gut microbiome as well. So diversity in the diet really helps improve that robust and diverse gut microbiome. And I always like to say it's an 80-20 rule with everything, right? If you're supporting your diet, if you're supporting your health 80% of the time with really nutritious food that's going to support your health and your mental health, then 20% of the time you can go and have those chips, or you can have that. I mean, dark chocolate is really good, really high in polyphenols, so really good for the gut. So that can be included in the 80, but choose what you want for the 20%. If it's somebody's birthday, go and have a piece of birthday cake and enjoy it. Don't feel bad about it, but really focus on that 80% of the time, eating food that has come from the earth, not that has come from somebody's marketed product in a box that most likely has the seed oils that we've spoken about today, which are really inflammatory. And if somebody were to just choose one thing to do after today, it would be to get processed food out of their diet.
Yeah. I mean, as well, I like the way you said that with the 80-20, because that happiness is important.
Yeah.
You know, and deprivation and restriction, it's not long-term sustainable.
No.
You know, the person that says I'm never eating chocolate again has just set themselves up for disappointment.
Yeah.
You know, it's just because it's not going to happen. Chocolate's great. I love chocolate. You know, but yeah, it's that balance. It's that 80-20. It's like, you know, if you're you know, I love that as well, where you say, you know, go vegan for a day. It starts with a day. That's not a big commitment. You know, on Tuesdays, I go vegan. I don't have meat, and I don't have the processed vegan stuff. I just have a lot more vegetables, some fruits, some nuts, some grains, all them sorts of things, all that natural stuff, you know, just for one day. And actually, I think as well, it's probably worth noting how you feel that day, or how you feel the day after. You know, how did you sleep? How was your mood? How was your energy? Because people don't do stuff without a benefit. You know, so it's very much about saying, okay, I did this for one day and I felt amazing. You know, couple of days of that, and before you know it, you're vegan 2 times a week, you're vegan 3 times a week. You know, I'm not vegan, but I tried to take the ethos of I eat vegan, I just add meat. That's just the way I go. You know, I like steak and chicken and whatnot. So, but
and it's really beneficial, don't forget. Steak and chicken and foods like that. I mean, everybody needs to find what diet works for them, but I don't like to support any diet that is restrictive or that removes any major food group. So neurotransmitters are created from B vitamins. B vitamins are very high in things like animal meats. But again, look at where you're getting your animal meats from.
I mean, I like that as well, because you know, it was important that we define it. You're not saying that vegan is the best diet or anything like that, because that's not what you're about. You know, you're about treating the person and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's important to add. Here's a difficult question. Is it possible to reverse poor mental health side effects by making changes in these areas? So the areas of breathing, nature, diet, because that's a big claim, isn't it? You know, like if we breathe deliberately, box breathing for 2 minutes a day, if we go out midday and get some midday sunshine, if we look at our diets with intention, can we actually reverse poor mental health? Do we need to have the medication and all that sort of stuff, or can we do these things and improve it?
I believe that we can control our mental health with the things that we have discussed today. I will say one caveat to that is some people have really deep-rooted psychological reasons as to why they may be depressed or anxious. And for that, talk therapy would be really, really important for that kind of person. But I think a combination of talk therapy and all of the things that we've discussed today would be a much longer term solution and will give the best quality of life. Because you may be taking the medication, but doesn't all the medication come with side effects?
Yeah, I know.
Or are you going to be on it forever? Taking medication means that you're stopping the body from doing something that it should be doing. Okay. And that is going to have an effect at some point in time.
Somewhere else in the body. Yeah.
So then you'll be given another pill to take control of that issue.
Yeah.
So yes, it is a big claim, but it is one that I stand by wholeheartedly. And it is through the research that I can say that as well. So I'm not just saying that because that's what I believe, but I'm saying that because the research is showing that support in all of these areas shows that people can reverse their mental health conditions.
That's an incredible thing. And actually, to me, it makes sense. You know, the body is an incredible machine. And nature is there to support your body. Everything we need is already there in our bodies. That we have processes that are there for everything. The problem is sometimes we need to get out of the way of that process and let it happen, you know. And as far as talking therapy goes, I mean, talking therapy isn't something where you go to somebody and they give you answers. It's about finally releasing those thoughts and feelings that maybe you knew you had, maybe you didn't. You know, you sit with somebody, you speak, they listen, they offer perspective, you know, because a lot of the time we can get caught up in our own narrative, and that's how people get stuck because they create something that they sell to themselves and then they buy it off themselves too. Like, guess what? When you're in a poor mental health state, you might not be the best person to guide your decisions at that point. So that might not be, you know, I've had therapy for all of the things that happened to me when I was younger. And quite often I've lived with a narrative my whole life. And I say it out loud and the person repeats it back to me and I can hear that it's not true. I can hear it. And when I hear that, I can't unhear it. And then that process starts of, what if it isn't true? What if it is this? What if it is that? So the diet, the going out in nature, breathing, all of these things are important. But I love the way that you say that it needs to be supported by talking therapy, because ultimately the goal, I think, you know, when it comes to trauma, is ultimately finding a way to accept it. And that doesn't mean you forgive anybody. That doesn't mean that people get away with things or that you have to like it. It just means that whatever's happened to you that has caused this mental health sort of problem, issue, challenge, there needs to be a way that you can accept that happens, that happened to you, and you can support that process by you know, at the end of the day, I've been through traumatic events, and then it's led to me not sleeping very well, which has led to me not eating very well. And all of these things, it's just worsening it all, you know.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
It is. And you can feel very trapped in it. So doing these things, and I get it. Breathing, frustrating, you know, it's hard to do. It's like meditation, you know, like sat down, am I doing it right? All these different things. Going out in nature, there might be a point if you're not used to it, that you might feel a bit like eye rolling, like, oh, this is ridiculous, it's not doing anything. And it won't. Day one, it won't, you know. You might go, oh, that was nice, you know, but long term, over time, that exposure to nature, that breathing, and obviously the diet, you know, I think it's obvious, you know, when you eat things and you feel bloated or you feel rubbish afterwards, or you feel sick even, you know, how many people eat stuff, feel sick, and just think it's normal, you know? And it's
and go back and have more.
And it's not a judgment. We're not judging. We're not holier than thou. It's there. This is information. Take it or leave it. It's stuff that you know that works. You've seen it work, I'm sure, with your clients, and I'm sure you use it on yourself. And it's quite honestly, like breathing and nature, that's free, right? It's not free food, unfortunately. Although you could grow your own, I suppose.
You could. You could.
And then you know it's not covered in oils. I mean, that's a good point though. What successes have you witnessed in this area? So what examples have you got of these things working?
So, I mean, the clients that have come to me with depression and anxiety, it is working through a lot of elements. I do like to recommend certain testing for my clients to understand exactly what's going on in the gut microbiome. I have one lady in particular who did do stool testing, and we found out that there's certain bacteria in her gut that's very important for mental health. She was actually missing those microbes.
Wow.
So helping her with supplementation, but also the same things, time out in nature, stress management, diet and lifestyle stuff as well. And she sent me an email a couple of weeks ago saying she doesn't actually know how to describe it other than saying contentment, that she finally, for the first time, and she doesn't know how long, has felt content with life and just happy and ready to carry on with things in the future.
Oh, it's giving me goosebumps.
Yeah.
That must have been so lovely to hear that.
It really was. It really was. And I can't take all the credit because it's the clients that do all of the work themselves, right? I can help guide them. I can help motivate them, but really it comes down to the individuals.
Yeah. And I think it's about understanding that this isn't a quick fix, and it's not supposed to be. You know, you can take the antidepressants in the sort of short term if it's going to help you get through that really tough time. But ultimately it's what you do, how you set yourself up for the long term. I think that's going to, and it's about how wonderful is it that we can take responsibility, that we can take control, that we don't have to rely on anybody else, that we can actually make these decisions for ourselves. I mean, that's scary for some people, but it's also wonderful.
It's empowering, isn't it?
Yes, that's the right word. Empowering. You know? And it's about like training yourself to stop ignoring those warning signs and to start listening to your body. What is my body telling me right now? You know, like I say it all the time. Like I've had clients, female clients mostly, if I'm honest, when I worked in the fitness industry, and they'd be standing there doing what I called like the 2-year-old wee-wee dance. they're like, they need to go to the loo. And I'm like, why are you not going to the loo? Like, they're like, oh, I'm just so used to holding it in. I'm like, no, like go to the toilet. And what I wonder is like, you know, if you're not listening to that very primal, very normal urge, what else are you ignoring? You know, what else are you ignoring? So listening to your body and just realizing all the time that it's not a quick fix, it's a long-term solution. And there's going to be days where you sack it off, you know, you just go, you know what, today I'm going to eat cake. Crack on. Eat cake, it makes you happy, good. You know? So do you have any tools for people who might be going through challenging times? Sort of, you know, you mentioned stress management and things like that. So are there any sort of like stress management tools specifically that you think would help people?
I mean, it completely depends on where somebody is. When I say stress management, I like to incorporate meditation and yoga as well. But if you are in a stressful period, you're not going to be able to do things like meditation because your mind is saying, I'm in a stress response. I need to remain vigilant. There's no ways I'm going to sit there and go,
I'm not closing my eyes.
So breath work is always something that I recommend to clients. Another one that I like to do is something called vagus nerve stimulation or vagus nerve activation, which is simply putting your head, resting your head in your hands and looking to the right. And you're holding that position until you feel a shift in the body. So what you're looking for is something like a yawn or a sigh or a, whew, I can feel myself drop into it. And then you shift over to the other side and you hold that position. And if you don't feel anything, then do it for a minute each side. But that helps educate the vagus nerve on when it should fire and when it should not fire. Because if you've been in a chronic and constant stress cycle, the vagus nerve can get stuck on always on mode. And remember, I said earlier that vagus nerve senses danger or perceived danger and activates the stress response. So you want that vagus nerve to fire when it should, but to not fire when it shouldn't. And activity like that, the lateral eye stimulation, is one way that you can educate the vagus nerve on when to fire and when not to fire.
I've never heard of that before. That's I'm quite excited about that. I'm so going to try that when I get off this.
You do.
That's brilliant. That's really nice. Because I've heard a lot about the vagus nerve and done a lot of reading around it and stuff. And it, you know, I think it feels like it's becoming an important sort of buzz topic at the moment.
Yes.
Lots of people are talking about it. But the problem with stuff like that is that when that starts happening, you start to get misinformation. So it's nice to hear somebody who's educated on this give a tool over like that. So thank you for that one. I will definitely put that in my toolbox.
That's all right. So something to add to that is people often think, oh, so vagus nerve, let's do some vagus nerve exercises. if you just add that one thing, I don't think it's going to do much. It's the whole marginal gains thing with our health, right? It's not one thing that you do that's going to make you feel better. It's the combination of all of the things that you learn and all of the things that you do that result in this feeling of health and well-being. So, cake's not going to throw you off the bandwagon, but if you're not eating a nutritious diet every day, you're not going to feel well, even if you are doing the movement and the eye exercises and the time out in nature and the everything else. If you're not fueling your body correctly, you're not going to feel well. And the same is true for every other element.
Yeah. And I think that, again, going back to the sort of the medication, I think sometimes people get themselves in such a or find themselves in such a desperate state that they think that they put all their eggs in that basket of medication in hope that that is going to solve the problem. And then they don't want to come off it because they're scared. And it's just really, it's a real shame, because it is, you're right. I don't know if there's any situation where there's just one thing to do to fix it.
No.
There's always lots of things to do, and then they need to become a regular practice and a consistent practice all the time. Wonderful. Really is lovely I knew this would be fun. I knew I'd learn stuff today. So finally, is there anything that you'd like to pass along that could help people with their self-development? After all, this is the self-development podcast. Is there anything that you feel is important that you've done on yourself, maybe, or you've seen work consistently with other people that can help people with their self-development?
I would say a lot of what it's a repeat of what you've said a lot on this podcast is listening to your body. Right? The body is very intelligent. If the body needs rest, it'll tell you. Let's start listening, because only when we start listening to our bodies and working with our bodies as opposed to against them, that's when we will grow. That's when we will develop.
I mean, that's my whole principle behind. I have a program called the Superself Program, and my belief, because I've seen it for the last 15-20 years, I've seen that every person I've ever met that's having any challenge of any kind has always got the answer. They've always. I heard this analogy. I don't know if it's true, because I've never met anyone that's done it, but if you get stung by a stinging nettle, that the sort of antidote to that sting is in the leaf. The stinging nettle. Really? If you crush the leaf inside, there's like, but you tell someone that, I don't want to be the guy to try that. I'm
going to do that. If my kids get stung by a stinging nettle, I'll definitely take that natural route.
See if it works. Let me know, because I'm not brave enough. But what I mean is, I love that analogy, is that like very often, like the answer to these problems these challenges that we're facing in life, we do know the answer. And actually part of the problem is the effort we're putting into ignoring it. It's always there. Listen to the body, listen to yourself, trust yourself, believe in yourself. You do have the answer, and you're very capable of making change happen. What an incredible person you are. I've really enjoyed this. Listen, before you go, let people know what's next for you and where they can find you on social and websites and whatnot.
Thank you so much. What's next for me? I am doing one-to-one programs, and I'm hoping to run a group program, but that will probably only be after the summer, because I feel like it's a bit too close to summer to start anything. And then summer, absolutely nothing happens in the UK. So look out for something happening in October for a group program, 6 weeks to empower your mental health. I do corporate workshops as well. I love working with corporates. I used to be, like I said, in one of the big four. So I love doing corporate presentations as well, specifically around the mental health space. Socials, my website is www.dc-nutrition.co.uk. I'm on Instagram as dchappersnutri. I'm on LinkedIn as Dana Chapman, and I love connecting with people wherever they are on whatever social media platform there is out there.
Wonderful. I mean, I'll put all of those details in the show notes to make it easier for people to find you, because I think that what you're doing is very, very, very cool, and it's lovely to have that sort of nutrition therapist connection. I think it's very important, and I think that what you're doing is awesome. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've loved talking to you.
Take care.